Do you have a bunch of unfinished paintings like I do? This week I went through my storage and pulled out a bunch of cold wax and oil paintings that I hadn't finished. Today I'm going to show you one of those. If we haven't met before, I'm Pat from Scrivener Art and Design on Vancouver Island in Canada. I love teaching and mentoring students, and I'm soon going to be opening up a new membership for people like you who want to learn more and have a community. I'll put the link in the description for the wait list, and I hope you'll join me. Now, enjoy the video. I'm going to start by loosening up and just bringing some energy back into this piece. I'm going to use a variety of water-soluble mark making tools. So I have Derwent pencils, Stabilo Markle, and Neocolors. So I'm just coming in different areas, kind of scratching and scribbling, just to bring some energy back in before I start. Here I'm using a woody Stabilo pencil in teal. At this point, I'm not thinking really where this piece is going. It obviously is a landscape, has a patch of water in it, but we'll see how it evolves. So just coming in, adding a little bit of line back in the background. I often start a painting this way just by coloring or making marks. This is a Neocolor 2 crayon that I'm using to put some lines and marks down. And you can see already that the painting is starting to change. Even though I'm not really thinking about what this painting should become, it is starting to take on a new look now that I've broken up this solid area on the bottom of the painting. So a variety of Neocolor 2 crayons here in yellows and orange and red. So even though these are water soluble, we're not using water with the cold wax and oil. I'll be using wax and they will not run, so they're totally great to use in this way. No fixing is required like when you're using them with acrylic. I thought I would try some pan pastels now on the wax, and my wax is very dry, so I'm not sure this will work as well as if my wax was a bit tacky. I'm just using a 6x6 stencil and a makeup sponge to apply it. Now some of these marks may stay, some may go, but right now I'm just playing and experimenting on top of what I already had, pushing this piece forward. Well, that's the intention anyway. Just taking some pan pastel and wiping it over top. I love these pan pastels, the way they stack up together. They don't take up a lot of storage, and I find them easy to use. They have a great selection of colors, and you can also get a palette that you can set them out in so that you can easily see them. I'm just sealing over this now with some cold wax, and it will pick up a little bit of my color that is on there that's loose like the pastel, but it won't shift the water soluble medium that I used. It may make some water soluble mediums appear darker, especially like the black Markle pencil. That could start to look darker than it does. But in any event, it's just experimentation, and I really encourage you to try different things and see what happens with them. I've mixed up a more neutral kind of celadon color using my phthalo blue, bit of white, maybe some yellow added in there, or black, just not sure what all I used, but just putting a little bit of this color down in the background. I'm using a catalyst wedge scraper here. I really like the ergonomics of the tool. My hand doesn't get near as tired with it as if I used a credit card, but you can certainly use a credit card or piece of cardboard to do this technique as well. I'm wearing gardening gloves. I find that they're really good for working in cold wax and oil. I can take them off a lot easier than a nitrile glove. I don't have to throw them away. I can actually clean them with a little bit of vegetable oil at the end of my session, and that seems to get a lot of the paint off, and they're good to go. So I use the same gloves for a very long time, and I like to find ones that fit me really well so that they're not sloppy. So I'm just using a palette knife in here, bringing in some teal color, kind of scraping it on top really gingerly to just put it in some places. So again, I am just adding, not sure exactly where this is going, but it is starting to take on a very different look than it did earlier, and it's feeling a little more connected now as well. When you're using a palette knife, you want to make sure it's an offset palette knife. That's one with a little curve on it. I'm going to try to mix up some green here, some kind of limey green. Got my yellow and my phthalo blue. I also have some turquoise. Often by adding a little bit of black into your yellow creates a very nice green as well. So again, using the palette knife just to drop some color in places. So I am really building up layers in this painting, and I definitely want the texture to be more in the front, the foreground of the painting, rather in the back. And I do like what I have happening in the background, in the sky area, and the faint look of perhaps what might be mountains. I like how that looks, so I probably won't tamper with that too much. So now I've added quite a bit of green, and it's kind of feeling ugly to me at this point, what I've done in the front. So I'm going to keep adding layers with more tones and colors. This is the beauty of cold wax and oil. You can keep working on it for quite a while, even though it's wet, before you really have to put it aside for a bit. And it will tack up overnight so that you can continue on the next day. One thing you want to keep in mind is to try and lay your colors on top. When I teach this, I notice a lot of people overblend, and they're working too hard on their painting. So having a gentle touch, I find, works better. So just coming in on the water area here and adding a little bit more dimension to it. So it's a bit easy to make brown when you're working like this. So this is why you need a very, very light hand. If you want a really smooth surface, you want to use a scraper to smooth things down, but if you want some more textural marks, the palette knife works very good for that. And I find both tools don't allow for a lot of detail, so they do force you to stay looser with your marks. So I'm bringing that water stream up to the top of my painting now. This is all very intuitive. I do not have a photo reference at all. It's just something coming out of my imagination. And I do really love streams and estuaries. So this is just something that's in my mind from hikes and going out on different trails. Mixing up a little light yellow here just to put a little bit of sun hitting the water. If you're wanting to learn cold wax and oil and have never done it before, I do have a starter course that's easy to get going on, explains all of the things you need to invest in, and you can start super simple. And then how to do a landscape painting from an image. Starting with an image is often easier, but we are going to abstract that. So I will put the link in the description below. Here I'm scratching back in with a bamboo skewer. It's absolutely one of my favorite tools. So just moving some paint around and scratching back into subsequent layers. This is going to build up some texture. And when I put more paint down, it gives the paint something to grab onto as well. So I'm going to add some red to the yellow. Make something that's a little more orange in color. That's going to take a lot of yellow and not so much red. So I kind of went about that the wrong way. Start with your yellow and add your red to it because yellow doesn't have much strength as a tinting color. I'm just applying this in places, adding a little bit more color. This is starting to feel like fall, even though it's springtime here in Canada, but it's starting to feel like a fall painting to me with the reds and oranges. So don't be worried if something doesn't look right. You have the opportunity with this medium to wipe it off, and it's also easy enough to cover over. So think about it as building up history as you go. So I'm coming into the bottom here to bring the water down just to finish that line, and I'm using a little bit brighter blue because it's more towards the front of the painting. So that breaks up the space at the bottom. It's connected a little bit in that area as well. I very seldom work with a palette knife, and today, for some reason, that's what I'm using. And so this is a smaller painting, and it seems hard to manipulate a lot of it with a larger scraper. I'm working 10 by 10 on a birch cradle panel, and I have the edges taped. It's really important to tape your edges and also put some paper on the back, because when you pick these up to move, it's so easy to end up with paint on the back of your cradle panel from your fingers. So I totally cover it, and that's, you see the tape at the back there, some of it's come loose, but it's really important that you do cover them, because you will get paint on your table as well, and then that can get onto the back of the painting. And there's, to me, nothing that looks more amateur than having a really messy back of your painting. To me, it just doesn't look professional. Now, there are ways you can correct it if that happens. You can prime over it. It is oil paint, so you're going to have to prime it and then repaint the back. That's the only way you can get those marks off. I mean, if they're small, you might be able to remove them with a bit of solvent, but if you've got a lot of marks on there, the only way is to gesso over it with a primer, oil primer, because you can't put latex on top of the oil or it's just going to come off. And that has happened to me on the sides, where I've ended up with a bit of paint on the sides, and then I've painted it with a latex paint and it has come away. So you want to be very careful not to end up with oil paint around the edges, especially if you're going to go back in and paint your sides with latex, as I do. So just coming in with a bamboo skewer, making lots of marks and lines. So this is taking on the look of grasses and definitely the look of an estuary. So I'm still trying to stay loose and random in this and playful. Sometimes I can get carried away when I start making marks. You don't want to necessarily overdo it, but it's fun to gouge back in to the under layers. And when it's really, really dry, the cold wax and oil, you can take a pottery tool and really scrape back in to your under layers, and that can be a lot of fun. So I'm just going to smooth this down a bit with my catalyst blade. Coming back in with some of the reddy orange paint here. Picking up a bit of yellow just to adjust that color a bit. So I like working with a very simple palette and mixing my colors to make them work. And that's going to give you a more harmonious painting overall. So I had put out for this some turquoise, primary yellow, a cad red, a phthalo blue, and a Van Dyke brown, and of course white. I'm working flat, which you can on a smaller piece, but I do encourage you to put it up sometimes and take a look at it. I've got a small silicone type brush here. I believe these are for pottery. I'm just trying to come in with a few little dark hints here and there. So one of the things with these little silicone brushes, they don't hold a lot of paint. So just a few dark bits here and there. This could be reminiscent of maybe cattails or just little bits of darker grasses browned up in the fall. Putting in something here that maybe looks like a stone or rock. I do have a PDF guide on 7 tips to loosen up as well. If that's something that interests you, it's a good basic set of tips that you could hang up on your studio wall to remind you of the things to do to stay loose. So I'm going to mix up a lighter color here to put in the background color. It's feeling too similar in value to the foreground, so I'm going to soften that up. That's going to push it back. So I like the idea that you can leave little bits of it peeking through. That gives it a lot of interest. So I really encourage you to pull out some of your unfinished paintings and take a look at them and rework them. Maybe you thought they were finished at the time and now you've grown a lot and you can see that there's room for improvement. So don't be scared to go back in on top. And also, if you have acrylic paintings, you can switch up to working with oil on them or cold wax and oil. If they're on canvas, you need to only use a small amount of oil, a small amount of cold wax, about 25%. But if they're on wood panel, you can mix 50% cold wax and continue on them. If I do go on top of an acrylic painting, I like to put a coat of clear gesso on so I have some tooth for it to bite into. But it's totally fine. And the other thing that works lovely are oil sticks or oil bars. So I like the R&F brand for doing that, and you can come in and blend out a sky, add some details in places. It's a lot of fun. So I treat this as a total mixed media type of medium rather than just pure oil or pure oil and cold wax. So just making some adjustments here and there now. So this painting is in real time. I didn't speed it up, so it gives you an idea of just how long you need to spend to really make some big improvements on a painting or get something finished up. So after I finish my session today, I will let this rest and come in and possibly make a few more revisions to it before it's completely finished. I always like to let it simmer a bit in a place where I can look at it before calling it totally complete. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any questions or comments below. I'm happy to read them and reply to all. Thanks for watching and happy painting.